hard. So I half jokingly said to Cody that I thought maybe he has a nice setup. He has a nice mic and it's like a professional kind of setup there. And I half jokingly said that I figured he'd be trudging along the road and it would be all windy and cars passing by. But it's good to have you on the show, Cody.
Hey, good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
And let's kind of fill in the audience from the get-go why I might have thought you would be trudging along the highway and actually the side roads is what I learned over the weekend, but why you might actually be trudging along with cars and wind, et cetera. What tell us who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bone cancer survivor, and I was told that I would never walk normal patients and their families, and we are currently walking across the nation. Given I was told that I would never do that, we we kind of were really excited to spread hope to those fighting and do a unique way of raising money for those that are in need.
Yeah, so I know that froze up a little bit on my end. I don't know if it will have frozen up on the final end product, but Cody has survived bone cancer, and he's currently walking across the U.S. from East Coast to West Coast. And he and I had the opportunity, and I may have already mentioned this in the introduction, but he and I had the opportunity to meet and also interact on stage. It was kind of a condensed podcast episode. It was a little different of a flow than I would do like this interview, but it was essentially, a synopsis of what he's doing. And someone actually another kind of mutual friend that we met out there, Dima Shine, who does Cirque du Soleil, who probably will be on the show as well. He said he was in the background and he heard Walking to Santa Monica. Was it Santa Monica or Santa Cruz?
Yep.
Yeah. He said, I heard Walking to Santa Monica. And his head snapped. And I said, yeah, that's what he's doing. So the gravity, it's a thing to say walking across America, but like to do it, it's pretty insane. Share with the audience how many pairs of shoes you've gone through, how far you've gone thus far, and how many pairs of shoes you've gone through.
Yeah, so we've gone already 760-ish miles. We're a little bit over that. And actually, well, today we now made it past Erlanger, Kentucky. So this was my previous total. We're probably now pushing about 780. But I haven't actually added up everything yet from today's total. And we've gone through 7 pairs of shoes. And it's a mixture of that heat with consistently being on your feet. And it's just, I mean, I think it's running the shoes just down much quicker because in theory, so Ultra Running is our sponsor and their shoes are great. My training pair, for instance, lasted me 3 months of training. And before it was like fully worn down and like, okay, need a new pair. Everything is running down very quickly right now. Yeah, we had a glue issue actually, and they sent me out some like shoe glue because like the rubber was like it's just so hot out there that like today, for instance, it's like a desert. We couldn't keep our hydration in at all.
So before I get to the hydration part, because you mentioned that being a huge component, and obviously we're the point of this conversation is not to just talk about the nuts and the bolts, is to talk about surviving cancer and what you're actually doing with the walk across America, which is a lot of people, there's people who do good things and a lot of people try to do good things, and it's very hard and it's very difficult, and it's hard to raise money for causes, even great legitimate causes. It's difficult to raise money. And I was super impressed when I heard, and we'll get into this, how much money you all have raised thus far. And considering you have, you're probably only a quarter or a fifth of the way there. Regarding the shoe thing real quick, I've had a couple, Dean Karnassus, who is the ultra marathon man, like that's his book, that's his brand. He was the first one I read about and eventually talked to about what you're saying. Like he ran, I don't know which deserts. Charlie Angle is another guy I had on the show that ran across, I want to say the Sahara. Another guy, it was in the sand, but it was the Gobi Desert that he walked across. So like just insane heat. But on the pavement, I think it was Dean where I first read like walking on the white lines because it's cooler than the pavement. And that's insane. Like,
well, it's so weird when you're dealing with ground Like I know what ground I like better than other ground. It's very it's
Yep.
just like because certain like you can when you're walking and you're on the road all day, you can hit little spurts of pavement or concrete where you're like, oh, this is much smoother and comfortable to walk on. Or for instance, like he's saying the white lines, yeah, they're cooler, but they're also flatter and thicker. So it provides a little bit more stability for my ankle when I'm actually able to walk on one of those white lines. Now, my stability is shot, so it's not like I can balance like a tightrope, but I definitely try to put when I can my right foot on one of those to elevate it just a little bit to give a little bit of extra stability with my ankle. It's crazy when your mind starts thinking about these weird little
I was
things.
gonna say, what nuances? Like we just go through our lives and it's like boom, 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 whatever that means. Whether it's just wake up and your kids start crying, or you what do you want for food, and then school starts, and then work, and then you're home and you're frustrated, and then blah blah blah. Like you don't even think. You were talking about the ultra running shoes. I remember I'm a pretty cheap guy. I'm like whether financially efficient or cheap or whatever it is, but I don't like to spend money on stuff. It's very simple what I like to spend money on. And my wife, for the first time, Latin, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago now. She bought my daughter um, a Patagonia jacket, right? And
Okay.
like for a little kid, that's inexpensive. We got a good deal, but it was like a nice jacket for a little kid. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. She's like, Charlie, just get a stinking Patagonia jacket. So I bought it, and I was like, wow, this is pretty warm. And it was like this. I had this shift in my brain about like equipment and function. And it's not just for like to look cool or
Mm-hmm.
to whatever. Like there's
Yep.
actual function to it, and all these nuances that you're talking about. Like we just don't ever think about those things.
Mm-mm. And I mean, I can't obviously speak for luxury brands or anything like that. I tend to be more like you too, like very practical, very. I mean, my family. I come from no money. I have, I mean, I've made an okay living myself, but I have nothing to my name per se, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's able to have exorbitant budgets for this, that, or whatever. And when you're looking at you take Patagonia or something, the quality of something like that, given whatever you would do on a normal basis, is so worth paying the little bit of extra than what you would on a knockoff for your task, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if you're outside all the time, yeah, spend a little bit of extra money. I don't know what a luxury jacket outside would be, but the one underneath that, that's like just known for, yeah, its name or it's this or that, it's going to go so much further and provide you much more comfort. And that's the same with shoes, with trekking poles, with you know, heck, headphones, sunglasses. I mean, sunglasses for sure. Those things. Like I wear Maui gyms, not because I am all about designer,
Mm-hmm.
but because when I walked into the to the place and then walked outside, they have like color enhancing stuff in their lenses. Other glasses don't have that. I'm colorblind, so I need all the color help I can get. So,
It's really cool. Even honestly, however it sounds when you're saying that stuff, I'm getting chills because we just don't think about functionality. We just don't think about actual practicality because we're generally just super spoiled that we don't have to. And
right.
it feels cool for me. It's like I'm gaining fuel from imagining you actually having to like structure like a tool. Like I have a Leatherman. I got a Leatherman for Christmas. I get upset if it gets dirty. So like I'm like the like wimpiest Leatherman carrier ever. But there are actually people who need that stuff. And with what you're doing, you mentioned the trekking pools. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But I have a friend who I met through Spartan, and he was, I think it was, he was hiking or backpack, similar to what you're doing, but not across the country. Maybe it was for pleasure or something.
Sure.
And he had, the backpacks, like a legit backpack with the straps and everything. He's like, here, let me show you how to put that on. And I was like, dude, it's a backpack. I put it on. You put on a backpack. He's like, no, no, no. You got to make sure this is here. There's enough space here. There should be about this much space here. And
Yeah.
like there's a way to wear a
Right.
backpack if you're legitimately hiking, to take pressure off your
Right.
lower back, to put it where it's supposed to be.
Yep.
You mentioned the trekking poles. at the wellness experience, and I was like kind of blown away by that. So can you explain that?
Yeah, man. I was a big, I guess, doubter of trekking poles or walking sticks or whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like for just a pure safety point, I knew what they could do because it keeps things away from me, right? Whether that's semis or whatever, I'm walking on the road and occasionally I'll throw my trekking poles up above my head. Then you'll see semis swerve out of the lane, right? Like down the street. So it's like they see me. It's like they acknowledge. It's been a weird thing that I've gotten to do every time I see a semi or a truck with a trailer. I throw them up above my head for 2 steps and then I put them back down. And it's like making contact with the driver. So outside of a safety perspective or keeping animals away, I can tell you stories about dogs coming at me. That's not very fun, but it's fun to talk about, I guess. But they take the whole load off your ankle or your feet in general. So my ankle, everybody else's feet usually. And as you move with them, it acts like a little stabilizer engaging your upper body to help you walk. So I don't notice it so much going downhill because I may not even use them properly. I'm a novice myself.
Yeah.
But 2, I have a unique body condition that I have to load up my left side of my body anyway going downhill to stabilize. But going uphill, it's as if I just push myself up versus actually walk up these hills. It has been a lifesaver to say the least.
Yeah, and I don't know if my thinking through this is accurate at all, but what you just said about kind of climbing up the mountain or the hill, and that makes sense because like you're sticking into the ground, you're kind of pulling with your lats, but also when you're walking, if you're looking to take weight off your lower body, your ankles, your feet, I mean, just think like you have 2 more touch points, you have like 2 more distribution points that are absorbing weight, and then also you're able to use your entire upper body, so it just like disperses that energy throughout your body.
Completely. And I've even realized as I'm walking near a road, because road conditions are rough, honestly, anywhere. Surprisingly, right now, what I've had is very big shoulders throughout northern Kentucky. So shout out to Kentucky. Didn't expect that really because of the country roads and stuff, but I've had fairly good sized shoulders. But generally speaking, there's a drop off, right? And I'll extend the trekking pole just a little bit more. And it's like pushing in the drop off just to keep my body onto the road because I do limp, right? So it keeps me a little bit more in line than what relying on just my normal core strength or hip strength would actually be able to do.
Yeah, and I want to send this out totally off the subject, but I was enlightened very much this past weekend. So I met Cody, like I learned of him and then met him because of the event we were at with Kroger and Jewel, the wellness experience. And like I said, we talked on stage. I had absolutely no idea, I'm from Pennsylvania, that Ohio, not just Cincinnati, that Ohio borders Kentucky, separated by the Ohio River, and Cincinnati is far away from where I live in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's like 7.5 to 8 hours. I had absolutely no idea. I'm looking at a map. My wife is like, "Why didn't you fly?" I said, "Because I had no idea where I was going." So for anyone with lack of geography knowledge, that's it right there. It was.
Yeah, and public service announcement: if you are up there, fly to CVG because it's right there.
Yeah, yeah. How about that? And I live right near the Harrisburg airport too, so it would have been pretty simple. So let's get to why you're doing this, and I have a little bit of context to add to your story because I had mentioned a few things when we talked, and I talked to my wife about them. But describe how this came about. You mentioned limping. I'm assuming you hadn't mentioned that before, but I'm assuming that is part of your cancer when you were young. But let the audience know how this kind of all started back when you were 14.
Yeah, I mean, in a quicker synopsis type of way, it was a misdiagnosis is what it started as. Taking off for a warm up, clutching my ankle, and seeing the doctor. He diagnosed it as Achilles tendonitis. As I went through playing sports, on and off, eating ibuprofen as if they were M&Ms every single night. Just to get some sleep or just to be able to walk normally. There were numerous times that I'd be in tears, and that went on for about a year until my mom kind of forced me to go get checked out, right? And that same doctor felt my leg and said he never felt anything like this in his life. Quickly, we were in an X-ray, which showed my bone swelling, and I thought that the bones could only break or fracture or whatever. I never heard in my life, especially at 14 and a half or whatever, that bones would swell. And then an MRI the next day, and we saw a softball glowing blob in my ankle on the screen. And everything kind of took off quickly after that.
Yeah, and Ewing sarcoma is the name of the cancer, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I had said to you, my wife is a middle school teacher, and I asked her about this, but Amelia is the girl's name. But so Cody's raising money, doing this to raise money for pediatric cancer, and to obviously that's like one of the most, I think, one of the most difficult things as a human to really comprehend, like innocent young kids who battle, maybe survive, a lot die from cancer. But she had a student who passed away from Ewing sarcoma. That's what it started, and then it ended up building and building. But just anytime I hear pediatric cancer, I think of her because she was just such a like pleasant, kind, nice girl from a quote normal family, and it's like boom, it just totally changed the course of their life.
Well, you always think, why them?
Yeah.
Right? Like you have people that are just horrible humans in the world.
Yeah.
And can skate by doing whatever they want to do. And then you have, 16,000 children in America a year that are fighting cancer. It's just why it's almost as if the kids, when they fight, it's my friends often talk to me about like the Alien movies, and now that aliens are more of a common thing in our media, and that's a fun topic, but we won't get into it right now. But I've said to them, I'm like, has anybody ever thought that we're actually the extraterrestrial test subjects that these people think, right? Like, because you think about getting abducted and then on this ship with tubes coming out of you. That's like the stereotypical alien abduction, right? Well, that's the children's hospital ward on an oncology floor. That's that's what these hospitals look like. It's not it's not really a far-fetched extraterrestrial idea.
Yeah.
That's our hospitals. And that's what you have to face. And that's what all these, kids, that lose the battle, sadly, or win the fight, end up dealing with is all of these tubes out of every orifice of their body, and dealing with, like, I heard of a little girl. She was receiving a chemotherapy that literally came out of her pores and was burning the bed sheets because it was so radioactive. Wow. She's 7 years old. Like, why? Why is she receiving something? I mean, if that's the best way to fight, then that's the best way to fight. But how is that fair to a 7-year-old that doesn't even know life in general?
Yeah, man. It's like if that's one of the most, if you're trying to figure out life, if you're trying to figure out why, if you're trying to figure out fairness or justness, that a kid with cancer, you could insert kid with a lot of things because a lot of terrible things happen to innocent kids. But
for sure,
I mean, that's one of the ones that just stands out to me, that like, okay, person, try to make sense of that for me. Right. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. It doesn't. There's no explanation of it.
I mean, I'm a big faith goer, especially during my fight. I was before as well. I was that kid that would always sit down with the priest and just ask questions, right? Like, question my faith to the end, and still do. Like little parts, like, why is Adam and Eve? Was that really two people in the world before? Whatever, right? Yeah. Like, because there's just some things that I think are just stories, but big faith goer, and it's so hard to say it's on faith, or God has that plan, or this is God's plan, especially if it's going wrong, but it's God's plan. And
I want to extend on that a little bit, because I've thought a lot about this, especially in recent years, last 5 years. I don't know. Maybe it's getting older. Maybe it's having kids. Maybe it's, when my mom and my brother are going through stuff right now. So, I've been questioning a lot of stuff. And I know for me personally, there's less questioning when you take the literalness out of it, right? Like God, Jesus, this, that, and rather, okay, we're humans. There's something that's greater than me, whether it's Jesus or God or whatever you believe in religion, and or nothing. The earth, like Native Americans, like the earth, the power, the energy, and when I look at it that way, I become less of a skeptic and think like, all right, well, yeah, okay. I can start seeing that more, because there's no doubt that we're not in control, that I'm not in control.
Right. We're definitely not. And, and like you said, for anybody, it could be different. I've often, as a kid, I've also often hypothesized that every religion's God is the same.
Yeah.
It's just how we portray it.
Correct.
Right. And so, I mean, does that mean Jesus is God? Like, does that mean, because the Muslim faith, Christian faith, they all believe in Jesus, everything like that. I don't know. I mean, I know what I believe, but I don't know exactly what the truth is. That's part of faith, right? Is everything is on belief. And including in my battle, like it pulled me so close to faith. I prayed twice a day, and I alluded to this part on stage about rubbing my eyebrows off, right? Because
well, explain that, because they didn't hear.
yeah, I mean, so before I hit my halfway point, I was handling cancer or chemotherapy, and my body was handling this chemo very, very well. I was fighting nosebleeds much longer than I needed to because I was stubborn. I was telling my family I just kept ripping the clot out. Some of these nosebleeds were like a few hours long. Brain should have hemorrhaged. So the big Lord, big man looking out for me. But I was dealing with this chemotherapy kind of reluctantly, but my body was handling it well, right? So I only lost the hair on my head. I still have my eyebrows. And I thought that I was this good looking bald guy. I was going to use cancer to pick up chicks, right?
That's what you said.
Kind of what I was thinking of, right? I was like, oh.
I want to jump in there, because you explained that, and it takes a lot to say that, right? Like, but you can't, it's like I say stuff all the time that I thought, and I'm embarrassed by it, but like you have the cojones to say that. And then I think you followed up and explained it perfectly, because how old were you?
I was 14 and 10 months.
Yeah. So like you're 14. Yeah. And I feel like, was there something else you said you thought of? That and one other thing? I might be getting you mixed up with someone else that I talked to.
I mean, no, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, probably mainly that. That's
Yeah. But when you said that, it was like, yeah, because you're a kid and you don't have perspective and you don't know anything, right? And you're just hit with this life and death situation.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I could throw something else in there. I mean, it crossed my mind to use cancer as an out to live life. Like it did, like one day it crossed my mind to use cancer as an out to live life recklessly, right? It was only one day. Was like my body's handling chemotherapy well. I had that naivete, that cockiness, that this is nothing. I'm good to go. I'm a fighter. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna this is what I do. And then surgery happened, and my whole life kind of changed. And that was the day that we had a month break from chemotherapy, and in that month break, I recovered well from surgery. They left my splint on longer than they should have, because they told me things just to keep my mind good, and then would extend things because I was stubborn. They knew that I would get on my feet the minute that they said I could. So they kept extending it. And like a workout, if you stop working out for a month and you begin again, you're sore the next day because your body's like, what are you doing? Well, I kind of figured that's how this was going to go. And after that 3-day treatment where I received chemotherapy for 48 hours straight, I was hobbling around, actually hopping on one foot. Fun fact, sidebar. Ever since surgery, I hopped everywhere. Like I didn't use crutches as much or as little as I possibly could. I would just hop. So my left calf, rightfully so, is 3 times the size of my right now. But it is what it is. So I'm sitting there after surgery, hobbling around or after chemotherapy, and I'm walking to the bathroom and I feel an itch on my face, and I just kind of start rubbing my eyebrow, and I see a few hairs. Well, quickly I start scrubbing them off, knowing exactly what I was doing. But what I didn't know was the person that was looking back at me when I looked into the mirror. And it was that moment that I broke down in immediate prayer, kind of feared for my life, was in one of those reconciliation things of I'm sorry for being stubborn, started doing everything. Like I was like, help me get through this. And I started doing absolutely everything that I had needed to do, should have done from the get-go, getting transfusions when I was supposed to, being there, taking nausea medicine, even if I wasn't nauseous, just to be in the act of I have cancer acceptance and just do what I need to do. It was literally one of those coming to Jesus moments of how I was living versus how I probably should have been handling the battle from the get-go. So,
Yeah. And you're 20, what are you, 25, 24?
Yep. 25.
25. Did you just turn, were you 24 going to be 25 or did you just turn 25?
I turned 25 last December. So,
Okay.
yeah, 20. Yeah.
I talked to a lot of people this past weekend. That's why I'm getting all mixed up. But that perspective, I'm curious, and I alluded maybe a little bit to this on stage, but I'll preface it again. So my brother has brain cancer, and we've been alternating going with him to the different surgeries, treatments, etc. Whether it's Pittsburgh or Texas or Ohio, a couple of things were in Ohio, and one of the things it sounds weird to say that I liked because that's such a like you don't like you never even wish you were there. So how could you say you liked it, right? But there was such clarity and purpose when I would be on those trips, as in all the other crap that mattered in life, just it didn't matter. Like all these emails that I'm looking at and like, oh, when's this? Or I got to prep the podcast. It just didn't matter. Nothing. It didn't care at all. And then when I'd come back here, little by little by little, the minutia annoyances of daily life would creep back in. So I'm curious for you, 10 years after being diagnosed, it's still a lively part of your lively meaning like present part of your life, so it's not like you forget about it. But was there a lasting effect from that experience that you still do kind of appreciate life and understand perspective, or do you also kind of go through the ups and downs of losing sight of what's important?
You always go through the ups and downs. Yeah, I don't think you ever get away from that. But I think an important thing, and I've faced my inner demons with my cancer battle or things that I've just gone, we all go through, right? Some of the mental side effects is stuff that's not often talked about that happens from cancer. Being my age, it was a lot of finding myself. Who am I? Why can't I do this? Pity me parties within my own head and whatever stuff that really should have never happened because, just really kind of grab the bull by the horns and roll with it. Right. The minutiae, because of all of that, you ended up with a longer, depressed, drawn out life. And I had to come to terms with the idea that I wasted time, or I had to come to terms with, I could have acted better here. I could have been happier there. I could have, because I was depressed for probably the rest, when I was by myself anyway, I was definitely depressed if I looked in the mirror.
And this lasted up through, like, are we talking a couple of years through high school or beyond that?
Probably through freshman year of college. And then that was when I started actually working out again. I went through a breakup with my high school sweetheart at the time, right? And ended up kind of spurring me on. That was always my outlet, was working out. Mm-hmm. And it kind of got me over that hump. And I repurposed that anger into that. And, that really allowed my mind to break free. But what it didn't do was it didn't help with the slight, PTSD, quote unquote, that was subconscious with finding out you have cancer. So scans lasted 5 years past my treatment date. And that was all the way through my sophomore year of college. And those scans, every time they would roll around 2 weeks before my back is cramped up and I have no idea why. You know, I'm not sleeping solid. I'm not doing, and I would tell people I'm fine because I did believe that, but subconsciously there was this fear that was just overwhelming, right?
So, quick interjection here. You know, he's talking about this from, you know, most recently 6-ish years ago that he had to go through this stuff. We're going through that now. And my mom was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So whenever my brother has to go for these scans, my mom takes on the stress, physically debilitates as well. So it, like what he's saying, it is a regular part of not just the person, but also the person's family. And you come from a big family, and we'll talk a little bit about them, but it's a very real thing. A fair amount of people listening have experienced this either firsthand or by way of their family. Some people have no idea, right? So there's both sides of the coin. So
Yeah. And in that, you know, I will be honest, like that probably I never, so COVID actually had those similar emotions come back around because I was trapped by myself in four walls. And that was a scary time, but a time where I was stayed in prayer a lot. And in the beginning, nobody really knew what COVID was, all that stuff. And when everything locked down, I was, like I said, I was forced to face those demons. And you asked me about, do you ever come back into these, you know, the minute, do you ever get stuck in all of that?
Mhm.
And the question is, or the answer is it happens. And I thought I was better before COVID than what I really was. It was like another false like sense. But ever since I went through that in COVID, it's like I found peace.
Mhm.
It's a very interesting feeling that I have now. As much stress that has come with the walk and everything that we're doing and trying to, you know, reposition this or that, it's also so much happiness because we're out there making an impact. We're seeing nature. We're smelling the roses you know, basically, right? Like literally right there in the flowers. And it is such a special thing to be achieving something you were told you would never be able to do. And though there are ups and downs with that, just like everything in life, these ups and meeting people like yourself and all kinds of others are way outweighing the downs. And you know the downs, like a lot of people have asked me, are you like, what goes through your head on the walk? Because it is so long on the road by yourself. And it's just the families that have reached out to us, quite honestly. You know, it's the people that we've connected with saying, you know, hey, I'm watching you because my daughter's learning how to walk again. Hey, I'm watching you because my son has cancer again. Hey, my kids are motivated by you and they've dealt with this and this. And it's seeing all of that and connecting across the nation that has just been super special. And it doesn't let the small stuff stay in your head. You know, it pushes it back out.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that I thought after coming home. You alluded to, you know, meeting me and other people. So like I said, I drove 7.5 hours to Cincinnati. Then I had like 5.5 hours, and then 2.5 hours broken up a little bit. So it was like a lot of time on the road, a lot of time to think. And on the way home from Cincinnati to Hollidaysburg, where I stayed at my parents' house, I was like, this is great. Like I don't 5.5 hours, whatever, man. I was just cruising, and I was like, why do I feel so good right now? Like break down, why do I feel good, right? And I feel like it was I would from the weekend, right? I utilized my skill set, right? I'm good at certain things. I utilized it. I asked questions. I hosted on stage. I was able to do that, right? I got energy. That made me feel good. I have these skills. Okay, I utilize them. That's like an expression of self. And then the second part of that was what you just said, like meeting you and Dima, and I met Jessica I, who's a fighter who I didn't know she was going to be there, and like all these like people, like interesting people, interacting with interesting people. So it's like you alluded to, you know, being by yourself during COVID. I mean, yes, I feel like all of us can relate one way or another to that. I know it was super tough for me, even though I'm like with my wife and my kids, etc. But if you listener are thinking like, how do I get out of this funk? Figure out what you're good at / like to do, and do it, And then secondly, interact with people. As depending on where you're at on the spectrum of feeling okay with COVID or not, wear a mask, get 6 feet apart, whatever makes you feel comfortable, but just interact with people, because those two things, like they brought me so much joy. And as I come home, I'm thinking, all right, Charlie, well, that's the recipe to happiness. So how do we keep that going?
Yep. No, and that's completely true. And that's what one thing with our nonprofit we're trying to do is provide those with a support that don't have a support system, provide them with a support system, right? I was lucky enough to have a larger family, as you referenced before. I'm the oldest of 7, and my family expands through divorces and all that. We all have stayed connected, right? But there's families that are fighting that don't. For instance, a little girl that we're working on finalizing aid for right now, she only has her grandma, and that's her only guardian. That's her only support system. And keeping their people's mental strong through these things is half the battle. And doing that through being there, like physically, or and as you said, you can mask up, you can stay 6 feet, stay 15 feet apart.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. But actually being like in the presence of somebody, even if it's through a screen, I don't, whatever, it doesn't matter. But people need people. And the other way that we try to do that with keeping the mental strong is by paying the cost of living bills, so that their stresses stay off of their shoulders. And the largest stress in most people's lives is monetary. So.
That like we talked about that on stage, and I'll reiterate it again from personal experience, because it's easy to hear this stuff. It's easy to like imagine it, but case in point, we go to Pittsburgh for my other brother, my sister, and we swapped. And I was like, all right, how are we paying for this? Like, how are we paying for it? What are we going to do? Are we going to split it? Or like, you going to take it? Am I going to take it? So like, you have to figure this stuff out, because life doesn't stop. This sounds so obvious, but you forget, but life doesn't stop. When Cody got cancer, life didn't stop. Like, no, his parents still had to, and I just read that I didn't know that your parents filed for bankruptcy, which I didn't know that. So it's like that stuff doesn't stop. Like, you still have to pay stuff. You still have to work. You still have to have dinners. You still have to change the oil in your car. Like, all the daily stuff, it just doesn't stop. So the fact that what you guys are raising money for helps take care of those financial needs, it's like, it doesn't erase every other burden, but it sure frees them up to focus on what's really important.
Yeah, and that is the goal, right? No matter what my family had to go through, no other child should face eviction, divorce, where food's coming from. Like, the family unit should be taken care of, because this stuff doesn't, your life doesn't pause to fight a fight, right? It has to keep going. Everybody else has to keep living, and trying to get it through and help get this into people's heads that, hey, your illness is temporary. It's a temporary illness, not a lifetime, right? Helping that be in the families, and then taking off that financial burden. And divorce rates with these illnesses are crazy high. Well, let's send the parents on date nights too, and things like that, to try to keep them ingrained in their self and their love. And so that with the absence of all of that comes the ability to be there with their child in the hospital, be in the fight, be present, and give that love and support that's needed.
And how much money have you guys raised so far?
So far, we have raised, actually, we just got a larger donation that I was informed of over the weekend. So we are now up to about $62,000.
Nice. And I did just donate before this, because I told Cody I would donate when I was on the stage, and I hadn't done it yet.
Thank
so I
you.
made sure to
Haven't
do it.
seen it, but thank you.
Yeah. I made sure to do it before we talked, because Cody called me out. I feel like called me out a couple times on stage, and I figured he would call me out here during this. So I wanted to make sure that.
Hey, now it's playful nudges. It's not a call out.
It was funny, but when I say call out, I would ask him like kind of a thought-provoking question, and he would kind of look at me like I was an idiot and give me a one-word answer. It was good practice. It was good on the stage practice. So in hindsight, no worries. So it's you, your girlfriend, and your friend.
Yes.
Is it that way through the country, or is it kind of like touch and go as you go?
We're hoping. I think a note is, I've spent pretty much as I can on my personal budget so far, and I'll continue to, until I have no money left, I will spend everything that I can to keep as much money going to the families as possible. Um, that being said, somebody has to work. So my girlfriend and I, we live together, and if finances get super, super tight, she'll probably drop out and go back to work and take care of that stuff. My buddy, um, he he's a 20-year-old with not many bills, and is was his company basically told him where he was working at. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this. I think it's an opportunity to see the nation on top of help people," and they were all for him doing that. His family supported that. So I have his support till the end for sure. And my girlfriend and I will be obviously actively wearing our personal financial situation. And then we're hoping, honestly, that we can find a fourth. To be honest, we're hoping that there's somebody out there that we can pull in because we have video work and all this other stuff on the road that actually, whether we move somebody that's actually on our team now over to that slot and then somebody else, takes up something, this emails or something. There's just work for everybody to do. So
Yeah, just to like add a little context to that, again, like you're adding a lot of context to what we might surmise or think we know about someone's diagnosed with cancer, and then you just kind of assume whatever they're living, and then you realize like bills, food, just like all the stuff, right?
yeah,
With what you're talking about, with what you're doing, it's a lot of work. And like I said, I've talked to people who have traversed countries and one rode their bike and then a couple of different across different countries. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of logistics. A purely simple thing from my perspective when I got home from this weekend, like I gotta upload everything. I gotta like take pictures. I gotta like do. There's a lot of follow up to the work. So I'd love to come home and
yep,
say, "Family, I'm home. I'll do nothing for 4 days." But it's just not that way. So with
yeah.
what you're doing, you're raising serious money. There's a lot of correspondences, a lot of logistics. So the fact that it is only the three of you, when you said that, it was pretty impressive that you're able to pull it off and have raised so much money already.
Yeah, I mean, I put it on faith because I don't know where some of it's come from.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, we up until the day that we left, we were still solidifying a few partnerships. And then the morning of, as we were loading up the car, we got basically what would be equivalent to almost $15,000 worth of backing. And we literally were like, wait, what? Because we were prepared to basically just,
Rough
I
it.
mean, and we have done this too, but we were prepared for a full 50 days of sleeping in a car, is what we
Yeah.
were prepared to do. And then it was like, oh, here's all of these hotel stays, and oh, here's more hotel stays, and here's, gas cards, and here's, whatever you could think of. Like it all came at one time. And we were like, oh, this can actually happen.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, it's completely faith because we keep reaching out. We kind of have a system that on the road we reach out to about 100 people a day. It's pretty regular. I told my team, and I'm a firm believer, so I have a sales background, that it's not about necessarily who we reach out to because we don't know who's going to be touched by the story. It's
Mm-hmm.
about how many we reach out to, and then we follow up and take care of those that do reply. Um, I love our backers. I love a lot of the people that have taken to our mission, such as yourself, Rich Franklin, some of the Bachelor people that we've been able to network with. I also met Cheryl Burke at the Kroger Wellness
Mm-hmm.
Festival. She was awesome and took to everything that we're doing too. Her family had a history with cancer, and so the people that it touches, we don't know those people because or companies,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all 25 or younger
Yeah.
and
That
still trying to figure this life out. So
that was another thing that impressed me, and I so it impressed me first with you, and then at this festival, there's a lot of young people, and when I say young, I'm saying 20 to 25, right? That most were graduates of Jules Inspiring Children Foundation, right? So that were helping put the event together. So you might not have known it, but most of the people in the yellow shirts that were hands-on with you were products of her program. And I was like, again, first when I was talking to you, and I was like, holy cow, he's only 25. I think from your biopic here, I don't know. I'm totally no idea where my basis for thinking you were older came from, but I just assumed you were older. And I was thinking, man, he's really got like really well spoken, really mature for his age. And then working with, I'll call them kids, but these young adults through Jules, it was the same way. They were like 22 with so much, here's the key, life experience. Like you've lived a lot of life in your years to be able to speak well and to understand, and you're doing things that require a lot of thought and a lot of organization. So same with those, the workers of her foundation that were there, like most of them come from difficult situations. They have a great foundation through her program. So in the end, it made me realize, oh, well, age is just a number, but normally when you're old. But this sense, it was like the youth side of it, just because they're only 22, holy smokes, they can know a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And you realize that surprisingly, I mean, even some of these younger kids that, I mean, I know we were young or, at this festival and stuff, but even when you're talking to like 10-year-olds that are actually going through some of this crazier stuff and you talk with them, they're just different, like they're just more mature, or they're maybe a little bit more bright or a little bit more humorous or what that, like they just have this little different twist to their what should be a kid personality. And it's just interesting how it matures the mind and while just everybody learning more about who they are.
Yeah, they have to. They're forced to. They're put up against it. It's thrown in their face. They have to. And then on the other end of it, you realize there's a book, Happiness Hypothesis. I reference it all the time, but in that book is described as post-traumatic growth. But they're dealing with this trauma and they are growing as people, whether it's mentally, spiritually, whatever way it is. We'll start to wrap up here ish. Overcomer Team on Instagram is your handle. And if you'd like to donate, listeners, I'd encourage you to donate. You can go to Overcomer Team on Instagram, and he has a link tree where it's simple. I did it in 30 seconds, maybe max it took. Your website is at Champions Do Overcome?
Yep, championsdoovercome.org.
Championsdoovercome.org. And where you're in Cincinnati, we said you walked through Kentucky or parts of Kentucky today?
Yeah, we're just south of Cincinnati. So we're, the Cincinnati, greater Cincinnati area. So.
And do you have, I don't know if I asked this before or not, but do you have it mapped out? Like, do you have a line drawn across the U.S. where you're going?
I mean, kind of. Technology's made that a little bit easier.
You're going west.
just anytime I see west, I know I'm in the right area.
Yeah.
It's more of connecting cities because we're trying to touch as many major cities between here and the west as possible. Obviously, without zigzagging too much. I did that a little bit earlier on in the trip, primarily to bring up, touch all the major cities in Ohio and see some stuff that I wanted to see in the beginning. But now it's a lot more pinpoint with touching as many major cities as possible, because we felt that if we walk through the city, we would impact more people and more people that are kids that are fighting than if we walked around or near or whatever. It's just different when you hear, hey, a cancer survivor is walking past the hospital, versus he walked near the area. Like it's not the same.
Yeah.
So we kind of just city hop, and it goes Louisville to St. Louis, Kansas City, Denver, Vegas, LA. So
yeah, it's just like that, dude. Just like that. It's just real easy.
That's
and
it.
Then you realize you're walking. Like Demon said, he was like, I heard walking to Santa Monica. It's easy to say, yeah, from here to there. And then you realize you're walking and it's like, holy smokes.
Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't think we could make it back to Cincinnati when we started.
Yeah.
We thought like we were mentally going to do it. If we had to crawl, we would do it. But that was daunting before. And we proved it to ourselves, and I think that's an important message is sometimes you don't know and you have to take one step forward,
Yeah.
right? You just have to try and see where it goes.
And I drew this, on stage, and I meant to do it earlier, but I want to reiterate, a lot of people raise money for different causes, and generally it could be in any sort of endurance, whether like the what's the Penn State? I'm having a mind right now. Penn State has a ginormous where they raise money for cancer. I forget off the top of my head. But it's jump roping, it's exercising, it's doing whatever. Right. Cody's walking across America, which is a thing you can do to raise money. But the extra, I think, important thing is that he was told he might not ever walk again. Like that's a huge, it's not just that you're raising money by walking. You're raising money by walking because the extra thing there is that there was a point where you might never walk again.
Yeah. I mean, figuring or hearing that you may never walk normally again, never, no athletics, never run, never do anything like this in your life ever again, especially as a high school athlete, where that was your hobby, that was your life, it's demoralizing. It's hard. And there's people that even in my case, or not in my case, but in other cases, are losing limbs, are feeling that their dreams are crushed. And I think that's something that everybody can relate to, including yourself. I'm sure at some point in your life, somebody told you, you won't ever be this, you won't ever do that. And it's those real doubts of looking yourself in the mirror and trying to figure out, where am I going and what do I want to be?
Yeah, and as you're talking, as we're talking, I'm looking up this Penn State because I can't believe I don't remember off the top of my head. But you can adapt, like you can't, like the header of the bio I got of you was overcoming adversity, beating cancer, and you're a tremendous story of overcoming adversity, and the way you do it is through what you're doing, having gone through cancer. But you listener, just apply it to anything, and literally. This is what I love about it, taking one step forward. You hear that. I say it all the time on my show when I read XYZ book, but you add context to it because you're actually taking one step. You're actually moving one foot forward.
Right.
And when I had this curious question. When you're going, and it's the three of you, you have your trekking pole. Do you have a flag, a sign? Do you have any like kind of fanfare to it, or is it pretty docile and calm?
It's pretty calm. I try to keep as much off of my body as possible. I do usually have my my hat on, this dingy thing right here. I told my team I won't wash it till I get to the sand.
That is gonna be a stinky hat, my friend.
Well, it's not yet, so I'm really pleased with that so far. My girlfriend occasionally does the smell check, like, oh wait, how's that not smell yet?
Good girlfriend.
Right. But hey, usually it's my hat and then some kind of branded outfit, whether it's shorts that say Overcomer on them. I have shirts that I wear that generally say Overcomer. Or this shirt is Germex because Germex is one of our sponsors. But yeah, so I try to wear branded gear, whether it's sponsored gear or Overcomer gear, so that people, if they see that, I'm hoping that the word, we have a merch line, you can buy t-shirts and support that way. But I'm hoping that the word itself can resonate with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Tremendous stuff, man. And I have another interview coming up here in a couple minutes, so we got to get going. I did want to throw in that Kroger is providing you with groceries, so that's awesome too. Yes. And the event that we were at was put on by Kroger. That's huge.
Yeah. Telling you, I did not eat properly this first 50 days of this trip.
Yeah.
So I am super thankful and excited that Kroger is willing to fuel the whole food approach to my diet. So
yeah, man. Yeah. Thon. That was the name, Thon. I couldn't think of that from the Penn State thing I was talking about.
Oh, I thought we were talking about some like Flash reference or something.
No, I just had a brain fart there. Yeah, dude, it's been awesome. I really enjoyed this. I didn't know how much new conversation we would have from having conversed before, but I mean, it was 75% original conversation. So I'm thoroughly happy with that. Like I said, I just donated, folks. Champions Do Overcome. Is it .org or .com?
I think both actually take it there. I think we linked them, but
okay.
Yeah.
And then overcome with an R, team on Instagram, and it's super easy to donate. So please do so. And Cody, best of luck. We exchange information. You have my number. I'll continue to do my best to connect you with good people. So folks, support a good cause. Support Cody, his program, and pediatric cancer, man. It's been a pleasure again.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the donation.